like to call this meeting to order of the Geneva Historic Preservation Commission for Tuesday, July 18th, 2023. Can you call the roll, please?
Hartman. Jensen.
Here.
McManus.
Here.
Phillips.
Here.
Solomon.
Here.
Stazen.
Here.
Zelmer.
Here. We have a quorum. Okay, let's start with approval of the meeting minutes for June 20th, 2023. Can I get a motion? Any changes to the meeting minutes?
No, motion to approve as written.
Second.
Great. Could you call the roll?
Jensen.
Yes.
McManus.
Yes.
Phillips.
Yes.
Solomon.
Aye.
Stazen.
Aye.
Zelmer.
Aye. Okay, now we go on to the third item on our list, which is continuation of the public hearing. Tonight, we will resume the public hearing for proposed demolition and designation of 4 East State Street, HPC case 2022-079 and 2022-080. The purpose of this evening's public hearing is to receive any additional testimony from the public and to provide an opportunity for the applicant to provide a closing statement. Should the commission choose to close the public hearing this evening, deliberation on this matter will occur at our next regularly scheduled meeting on August 15th, 2023, when a full complement of commissioners is anticipated. Deliberation on this matter will not occur this evening in consideration of other business pending before the commission this evening and due to the absence of a commissioner this evening. Is there a motion to continue the public hearing at this time?
Motion to continue.
Second.
Okay, could you call the roll?
Jensen.
Yes.
McManus.
Aye.
Phillips.
Aye.
Solomon.
Aye.
Stazen.
Aye.
Zelmer.
Aye. And then I think what we'll do first is, are we from, you want to read the letter into the public?
Thank you, Chairman Zelmer. Since the May 2nd meeting of the Historic Preservation Commission for this public hearing, we did receive one more letter in regards to the case. It's received of Alan Lehigh. It was received on June 17th regarding this case. I will hand out copies of the letter.
Okay. They're all the same, right?
Thank you.
Okay.
You get 3.
Oh, okay, are we gonna, we do the public, hear from the public first, and then we'll have the closing statement? Okay, so, I'm going off the list that we have here. Sean Gallagher, did you want to speak on this? No. No, he did check his item if he wanted to speak. I just want to make sure. Okay, Colin Campbell, you have?
Yes. I need a little tech help first.
Yours is. Come on. That's weird. Come on. This one.
And then you
Now.
just, there you go, Keith.
That's forward.
Backward and forward.
Okay, got it. I had shown some of these slides before, so I'll go through this very quickly. This is how iron works.
Could you state your name for the,
Oh, I'm sorry, Colin Campbell, 18 South 6th Street in Geneva. This developer has a history of being able to turn absolute wrecks into marvelous buildings. This was the Howell Iron Works. This is what it is today. This was the Kleinbeck Creamery. And this is what it is today. Both very valuable to the city of Geneva. This is a print from the archives of the Daily Herald, 3/26/2014, shortly after the foundation purchased the property. Notice the paragraph, regardless of the final use, we are committed to preserving the historical integrity of the site by incorporating the blacksmith portion of the current building with its historical significance into the planning process, the release from the foundation stated. Now, obviously, a developer can change their minds. That's not the problem here. So frequently in these issues, the issue of property rights comes up, that an owner of property should have right to do what they want with the property. But of course, the city has rights too. The city in which that property exists has rights about what can and cannot be done with property. We have zoning codes that are very strict and very precise about what can be built where. And we have building codes that are very precise about how things can be built. Frequently, when we come to an issue of saving historic property, you'll hear somebody say, well, if you're so interested, the advocates for saving it, why don't you purchase the property? It's $1 and do it yourself. That misses the whole issue, the high idea of the issue. I'm a part of the city of Geneva, and I am an advocate. I'm not a developer. And there are a number of others of us who have attended these meetings who are advocates for the best interests of Geneva. When the foundation purchased this property, as this states here, they were aware that there was a historic building on the property. They were aware that that was a building that could possibly be landmarked, even though it was not in a historic district, that it was eligible for that status. They took the business risk knowing full well that they might be required by the city or denied the ability to demolish the building by the city. They knew that. It's not up to the city, and it's not up to the advocates to bail them out of that. They took the obligation, and they need to live with it. This is what we have there now, as you know. The consultants mentioned an apartment building and turning the old blacksmith shop into maybe we could call it a sort of a recreation of the gazebo, which was a very, very popular night spot on the same property. And so I thought maybe a few pictures of what it might look like or what it could become might be helpful. A balcony out toward the river, a berm down to the down to grade, which would prevent any possibility. It only floods up to the basement, but that would prevent any flooding. As you can see in this picture, in addition to the east side of the building, which would serve as a kitchen, whatever, and an apartment building that is no higher than the Harrington and is a contemporary bookmark or bookend, a companion to the Harrington in the blue-gray and limestone finish. It would be a real asset for Geneva. If you look at it from above, see the amount of space, green space left here. It's not all apartment building. And one issue, of course, is parking. If you look just to the east of the apartment building there, right across Bennett Street, there's a small city-owned parking lot that holds 12 to 15 cars. Right above that is a city-owned parking lot that holds 46 cars. And across State Street is the parking lot, which is city and park district, and I'm sure an arrangement can be made there. So all told, we could possibly have some 80 parking places within 110, 120 feet of the old blacksmith shop. And what could it be? It can be preserved. It's a very small project compared with the Harrington and the Riverside. And it should be preserved and repurposed and utilized as a part of Geneva's history. And as has been talked about, more access for Genevans to the waterfront and another entertainment venue. There are a lot of possibilities for this building. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next on our list of people, we have Kendra Parson.
Excuse me. Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Kendra Parson. I am the Advocacy Manager for Landmarks Illinois. I previously commented on this application before your Commission on January 18th of this year. Since that time, Landmarks Illinois has placed the blacksmith shop again on our list of the most endangered historic places in Illinois. I'd like to take the opportunity this evening to restate our objection to this application and to respond to a few of the comments made by the applicant throughout this hearing process. First, since Mr. Petzold previously submitted comment for the record questioning my qualifications to be opining on this matter, let me state that I am a fully qualified architectural historian exceeding the U.S. Secretary of the Interior's qualification standards for that profession. Second, I would like to respond to the assertion that the building should never have been landmarked because the Illinois Department of Natural Resources believes it to have no historic integrity. With all due respect, I disagree. When the City of Geneva designated this building a landmark in 2018, it found it to have sufficient integrity for designation locally. Integrity is to an extent subjective, and whether IDNR believes the building to have sufficient integrity for National Register designation today does not mean that the City of Geneva erred in finding that it had sufficient integrity for local designation in 2018. Landmarks Illinois believes that the building does have sufficient integrity to merit its designation, and furthermore, we support local advocates and Geneva residents who continue to affirm that this place is important to them as an emblem of Geneva's history, which we also believe merits strong consideration both for determining landmark eligibility and for upholding designation. Third, at the May 2nd hearing, Mr. Petzold asserted that the initial landmark designation lowered the value of the property and was a, quote, condemnation. What he describes is also referred to as a taking. According to established United States case law, Penn Central Transportation Company et al. Versus City of New York, 1978, Landmark designation for the purpose of historic preservation does not constitute a taking or a condemnation. The Penn Central decision held that historic preservation is a legitimate governmental objective and that designating landmarks is an appropriate means for accomplishing historic preservation. It also established that a property owner must be denied all reasonable and beneficial use of their property to constitute a taking, not merely what the owner believes to be the highest and best use. As the Tesca Associates report shows, that is not what has occurred here, and therefore no condemnation has taken place. In conclusion, Landmarks Illinois believes that the City of Geneva made a correct and legitimate decision when it chose to landmark the building at 4 East State Street, and we urge the Commission to uphold that decision. Thank you for considering my comments.
Thank you. Next on our list is Al Watts from Preservation Partners.
First, I want to read a letter. I thought you were going to keep the list from before, so I didn't put this on the list here, but I had received a letter that a resident asked me to read to the commission. So if it pleases the commission, I'd like to read her letter. Just to be clear, I'm Al from Preservation Partners of the Fox Valley, but we neither endorse or oppose the views in the statement. This is not our statement. This statement is from Karen Alexander from 133 South River Lane in Geneva. She says, Geneva is not so rich in 19th century buildings that we can purposely destroy one of our only commercial examples, and to what end? There are only two arguments to be considered: the loss of our heritage if the building is leveled, and the monetary gain on the developer's part if he can build what he wishes without the bother of an existing historic structure. In one case, we save a piece of living history that can be used by schools, museums, libraries, citizens, and tourists. The other case, the developer's plan, benefits only the developer. I wish that Chodine Company would look on this awkward little building with the same imagination that they used to create the very successful Harrington Inn, where relics of Geneva's early history were saved and used. Now I have my own statement, if it pleases the commission to read.
Sure.
Just to be clear, I am Al Watts, Community Engagement Director for Preservation Partners of the Fox Valley, located at 8 Indiana Street in St. Charles. For those unfamiliar with our 49-year-old nonprofit organization, we operate 4 historic sites: the Durant Peterson House, Scholes School, Fabian Villa Museum, and Fabian Japanese Garden, and we also educate about the value of historic preservation. For a landmark building to be demolished and de-designated under Geneva City Code 10-6-10B, the building must meet at least one of 4 conditions. Based on the public testimony, the former blacksmith shop does not appear to meet any of these conditions. So 1 is safety hazard. According to the assessment report from Altus Works provided in the application, portions of the former blacksmith shop are in poor condition, while others are in fair or good condition. The report notes, for example, quote, the limestone walls have areas that exhibit severely deteriorated, poor condition, or missing limestone, unquote, while also noting that the limestone foundation was found to be in, quote, good condition and well preserved. The report from Altus Works does not appear to conclude the building is a safety hazard. Also, the building has not been determined a safety hazard by the preservation planner, a City of Geneva building official, code enforcement officer, chief of police, or fire chief. 2, the structure is detrimental to an improvement of substantial benefit to Geneva. There seems to have been no presentation at this public hearing on possible improvements for the site if the former blacksmith shop is removed. As a result, the HPC appears to have too little information with which to evaluate how the blacksmith shop is, quote, a detriment to a major improvement program that will be of substantial benefit to the community, unquote, as per the ordinance. 3, financial hardship. According to a pro forma review conducted by the City of Geneva by Tesco Associates and the Planera Group, rehabilitation of the former blacksmith shop could be done without financial hardship to the building owner. As a rehabilitated, standalone building, their report found that the return on investment could break even or be about 10% with TIF funding and historic tax credits. In a larger development project, they found little difference in return on investment between rehabilitating the blacksmith shop and replacing it. Their report concludes, quote, "Based on this analysis, we find that there are financially viable uses of the property given a range of public-private alternatives." Furthermore, for the rehabilitation of a historic building to be a financial hardship, the ordinance states that a building owner exhausts, quote, "all feasible alternatives to eliminate the financial hardship." Historic tax credits and TIF districts exist as tools to eliminate just such a financial hardship. The report from Tesco Associates and the Plenary Group shows historic tax credits and TIF funding would likely prevent a financial hardship. Consideration of all feasible alternatives can also discover a viable option that is less expensive and not a financial hardship. Only one rehabilitation option with a complete cost analysis was presented at this public hearing. Other options considered for the building with the Geneva Park District, the City of Geneva, and a possible tenant were mentioned, but without much detail. So there seems to be little that conclusively shows that the blacksmith shop is a financial hardship for the property owner. Finally, 4, retention of the building is not in the best interest of the majority of the community. In our recollection so far, only 2 community members, other than the applicant, have indicated in this public hearing as being in favor of demolishing the blacksmith shop. Over a dozen have testified against demolition, including residents from other communities such as Wayne and Aurora. The Kane County Historic Preservation Commission submitted a letter to you opposing demolition. The statewide historic preservation organization, Landmarks Illinois, has now testified twice against demolition, and it's on their most endangered historic sites for the second time. Over the decades, the citizens of Geneva have actively supported the city's historic character and charm, recognizing the value its heritage brings to residents, local businesses, and the city's brand. These factors suggest there is not a majority of the community in favor of demolition and de-designation of this historic landmark. With the evidence presented to the HPC at this hearing, the former blacksmith shop does not appear to be a safety hazard, to prevent a significant improvement for the city, to cause undue financial hardship on the property owner, or be favored for demolition by a majority of the community. Without meeting at least one of these conditions of the Historic Preservation Ordinance of the City of Geneva, a historic landmark does not meet the criteria for demolition and de-designation. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. The next person is Lee Estrand? Estrand? Okay, and then Erica Estrand. Okay. With that, I think we're at the point where we can hear Shodine's, the Shodine Family Foundation's final response.
Good evening. For the record, my name is David Patzelt, 77 North First Street, Geneva, Illinois, 60134. What I'd like to do is walk through some of our comments that we have on the TESCA amended report that was presented to you at the last meeting, consistent with how I commented on their initial presentation, the TESCA's initial presentation. I've marked my notes on various pages of their exhibit or their presentation. So the first comment I have is under that paragraph A, the summary of key findings, and I think we're all happy to hear that we agree that without public financial participation, this project will not have a return on investment over 10%, which TESCA Associates has confirmed or has stated that 10% is in essence the threshold at which a developer would consider proceeding with the project. So yes, financial public participation is needed. Under item 3, again, they found that we agree that a TIF is required for a 4-story development either with or without the historic structure being located there. So even if the building's not there, in order to construct a 4-story building that is permitted by zoning rights would require TIF participation. Item 4, again, we agree that TIF will be required if we are to build a 4-story and a 5th story is added to that building in order to surpass the 10% of a return on investment. Where we start to get some of the difficulties or misunderstandings with the TSCA report is when it gets into some of the actual financial numbers and how much is required for the financial participation. On page 3 of their report, they used an estimated land value that they arrived at of $50,000. That land value is too low, and it's an incorrect number. The City of Geneva and the Illinois Department of Transportation employed the services of an appraiser by the name of Santa Cruz Appraisers to prepare a value of what the land is and both this site, 4 East State Street, as well as 12 East State Street, and their values would put this $50,000 number in error, and their values are at least double, if not triple, what that dollar amount is. So we believe that we understand TSCA is not an appraiser. They were not asked to do an appraisal, but that number is significantly wrong, even with data provided by the City of Geneva's own appraiser and IDOT's own appraiser. Going to page 4, where in the report it says, including the change in value of the property over a given period of time, in the case 10 years, they start to talk about IRR. In their first report, they did not talk about IRR, and we believe that they have brought in this topic of IRR perhaps to try to cloud the issue. But what they fail to really instruct you on is when you're using the calculation of an IRR, there's several other factors that go into calculating an IRR. In essence, if we include the change in value of the property over a given period of time, we know that in this current market, or in the City of Geneva, even if you buy a home and you do nothing with that home over the next 10 years, the value of that property, based on market conditions, is going to go up. So in essence, if we do nothing with this historic structure and we let it sit there for 10 years, we will obtain a positive IRR simply because property values in this market are going up. So we believe that that is an error in their IRR calculation, and that should not be brought forward into the analysis. Under page 5, comment 7, they admit to correcting the annual debt service payments where they had inappropriately or inaccurately only used a monthly debt service payment to using the true annual debt service payment. They go on to say, we have also updated market assumptions for rent and operating expenses at the time of the application. However, they don't tell us what those numbers are. And they're very specific to say that they were at the time of application, which was 6 to 8 months ago, and those numbers are still unknown, and we can't tell from their calculations what those numbers were. However, they go on page 6, stating that based on these revisions, we estimate the annual return on an investment would be approximately 3.41%. So even after updating their market assumptions, TSCA is still showing that it is an unacceptable return on investment, which again, below the 10% threshold. In their numerical data tables, shown here on page 7, again, they skipped a lot of the details and the supporting documentation that they had previously provided in their first report. And unusual that some of the numbers have changed with no supporting information, such as under Section 2A, where it's a 4-story with historic building, they show the total development cost now is at $38,400,000. In the first report, they had the total cost at $42,433,000. Nowhere does it explain how they reduce the cost by that $4 to $5 million. We all know if you simply reduce the cost, the return on investment will actually get better. Again, on the 4-story without the historic structure, on the first report, it was $41 million for the total development cost, and it's now, in this report, at $37 million. The net operating income, they did not, although they showed a change in that, they did not tell us how they arrived at the net operating income. Under the debt service coverage ratio, they did say that they followed the various analysis, loan to value, loan to cost, and the debt service coverage ratio of the 1.25. However, they're still using an interest rate of 6.5%, which is, we know, out of not the current market. On their return on investment at stabilization, they had a 3.41%. Again, that was using the 6.5% interest rate. For your own analysis, we ran it at an 8%, which is the current interest rate, and that return on investment would drop to a 2.8. I don't know that the 0.6% difference, since you're under the 10%, makes any difference at all, but the numbers are certainly not getting any better. At the bottom of the chart, they provided the IRR at a 10-year analysis. And when you're looking at the 10-year IRR, there's other numbers that you have to include into your calculation. Those would include the property tax rate and what's going to happen with that property tax rate over 10 years, the expenses and what will happen with your expenses over 10 years, the rental income and what the increase in rental income will be over the 10 years, as well as I described earlier, the natural property growth. If nothing is done with the property, what do you anticipate in that market will happen with the growth of the property? Under page 8, again, their analysis 3, somehow the total development cost again changed. It changed again by $4 to $4.5 million. It was reduced in both analysis, and then again, they still came up with a range of 3 to 4% return on investment, again, reiterating that we know that that is not an acceptable rate of return. Under their assumptions, they did tell us that they used a 6.5% interest rate, which we knew, and we stated that it was not at current market rate. They also made an assumption that in 10 years, the cap rate for the commercial portion of the building and the residential apartment building, those cap rates will be 7.5% and 5.5% respectively. And we don't know of any projections or any organizations that will project out 10 years that those cap rates, which may be today's cap rates, will sustain themselves and maintain that 10 years from now. During the last meeting, there was a comment made about whether who is responsible for asking for the financial incentive to restore the historic structure if a financial incentive is necessary. I had written a letter to you back in January outlining, the letter was dated January 18, 23, and on page 4 of that letter, we outlined all of the steps that we had taken seeking financial assistance from the city of Geneva. That started back in October 25th of 2022, when Shodine and city staff members met to discuss exactly that same very topic as to what financial incentives were available. During that meeting, I was told that none were available and none could be considered at that time. However, there would be some further discussion. On October 25th of 2022, following up, Shodine wrote, I wrote to the city economic development director requesting financial assistance, and I obtained no response from them. In a meeting on October 28th, again with city staff agreed to respond back to Shodine regarding TIF funding availability because this was located within the TIF district. Shodine requested the city to obtain a consultant to do tax credit work, and I was told by Mr. Lambert that, quote, the city will not obtain any consultant to do tax credit work. On November 5th of 22, we received a response from the city staff regarding the TIF, or we had not received a response regarding our TIF request, and so we emailed them again in early November. November 9th, still hearing nothing from the city, personally called and were told by city staff that city staff will be getting back to us. On November 22nd, we still had not heard back from the city, so we sent another email asking for the status of the TIF funding. On November 23rd, we finally got a response back from city staff. And the city staff wrote, "You are inquiring about TIF funds to respond to comments related to a demolition request. Presently, you have a demolition request pending, and you are requesting TIF funds to preserve the structure. These requests are incongruent." The first several parts of that statement, we agree. We knew that we had a demolition permit or demolition request before you. In order to try to prevent demolition, we needed financial assistance. However, city staff went on to say, to pursue a TIF request to preserve the structure, the first step would be to withdraw our demolition request, which does not sound consistent with us. The reason that we are asking for TIF assistance is so that we don't need a demolition permit, and thus trying to sort out whether there would be financial assistance or not. So in essence, we have placed repeated requests to the city staff, as well as we have notified the historic preservation of our issues and not being able to get any feedback from city staff regarding financial assistance for the project. I'd like to, there was some published information regarding the landmarking process and what is involved in granting landmark status. And I'd like to have Kate McCracken come up and talk to you a little bit about that and that published document that was in the city's website.
Good evening. My name is Kate McCracken, M-C-C-R-A-C-K-E-N. I represent the applicant, and I'm going to diverge a little bit from numbers and give you all a break from numbers. And instead, what I'm going to do is talk a little bit about a couple things. So I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do, and I'm going to tell you what I'm not going to do. I am not going to rehash a whole lot of things that we've been talking about for the last 5 years. There are, however, certain things that I need to get in the record. We have a court reporter. The court reporter here is intended to take things down as they're said, and the record and the transcript has some legal significance. So there are some things that I may have to repeat tonight, and I just beg your indulgence and your patience because I'm repeating them for purposes of making sure that they're properly in the record. What I am going to do is try to focus everybody on the ordinance, on some of the documents that have been established by staff, and really take a step back and talk a little bit about how we got here. And so first, I thank you. I know this has been a slog. I mean, it's been a 5-year slog. It is important, for purposes of the record, that we keep in mind some specific facts. And I need, it's very easy in these kind of settings for misinformation to get disseminated and for that to become reality. What I need to do is make some very specific points so that the facts are actually clear. And the first fact that I need to make clear in talking about how we got here is when this property was purchased. This property was purchased in 2013. Yes, the deed, it was purchased. And so why is that important? That's important because it wasn't until 2016 that the underlying ordinance, the historic preservation ordinance, as it relates to how landmarking status is established, was passed. So,
Can I just add one question for you? I hate to interrupt you, but I will ask you one question. There was a method to designate things before that also.
this was the first time you could do it without the owner's consent and over the owner's objection.
I don't know whether that is actually true.
Well-
Is that actually true? That's accurate. Okay, because I had heard.
Okay, that's very important.
I understand that's very important.
I will tell you exactly why it's germane. It is germane because we have consistently listened to testimony that Shodine knew exactly what it was getting into. They could not know that a third party who has no ownership interest.
The issue of the preservation is already concluded.
I understand that, but
Because we are making a record, and I'm going to let you speak, obviously. But the issue of preservation is not before this tribunal. That's concluded, and the time at which to object to it is concluded and run. Sorry, I'm getting yelled at appropriately.
You're on.
Yeah, thank you. That issue is done. It is not subject to this tribunal or this hearing. And any objections you have or your client has, the time in which to make those objections have told. They're
and they
over.
were made, but for the record, when we have testimony, with all due respect, when you have testimony, repeated testimony, that someone knew exactly what they were getting into, that is false. And I am not going to sit here and say, yes, in 2013, we had knowledge of an ordinance that didn't exist. That's all I'm trying to say.
Okay.
That needs to be
Then-
made clear.
Then let's get to the
That's fine.
petition. Thank you.
So now that we made it clear that there is a small group of people who can dictate and control what happens with somebody else's property.
That is opinion.
Fair enough. I think it's important that we at least talk a little bit about how we got here 5 years later.
Can I ask one other question?
Uh-huh.
Who physically bought it in 2013?
I can tell you the deed. So originally it was bought by Shodine Family Foundation and then was purchased, then was transferred into a land trust. I've got the series of deeds I can go through with
Okay,
you.
so it was originally purchased by Sodine Family Foundation and then put into a land trust? Okay,
And it may have been an entity of 4 South State Street, or a
Okay.
LLC entity that was a Shodine entity, and it was ultimately put into a land trust, ultimately acquired or transferred to the foundation. But those are,
so originally it was purchased by the Shodine Family Foundation, moved to an LLC, and then moved back to the Family Foundation?
if you'll give me a minute, I'll take the deeds and I'll go through them with you.
Well, no, I mean, is that the testimony?
Sure, I'm happy to go through the deeds.
And the dates on the deeds?
Yes, I will give you the dates on the deeds. I'm glad I brought them. All right. All right, so, 2014. For Each State Street Holding Company LLC was the initial entity in 2013, as of August 3rd, 2013, that acquired the property. Ultimately, 4 East State Street then transferred the property to a land trust, Chicago Title Land Trust. That deed is dated 2014. Specifically, it is dated the 19th day of March 2014. Thereafter, it was deeded to the Chodine Family Foundation. I didn't bring that deed with me, but I can certainly provide that deed to you. It's public record. It was after 2014.
But before 2016.
Before 2016. At the end of the day, it's essentially the same people.
I don't really believe it.
So you were going to say you don't really believe that.
Well,
so let's
no.
explore why you don't believe that.
I think that a family found, well, let's not explore that, just continue. I don't, whether who owns it is not that important to this. Please continue your presentation.
At the end of the day, remember, I don't know how many of you were here in 2018 when we had the original landmarking hearing, but the testimony at the end of the hearing when this property was landmarked was that the individuals who were interested in having the property landmarked just needed a little more time. So I'm hoping that we can all at least agree on a minimal fact that 60 months or 5 years is sufficiently equivalent to a little more time to determine what other options are out there. What we didn't do, as I'm sure you recall, we did have a fair amount of objections during the original landmarking hearing, but we're dealing with the specific ordinance now. And the portion of the ordinance that we're dealing with right now is 10-6-6, okay? And what I'd like to do, if no one has any objection, is just give you a copy of the actual ordinance. Just a few pages, so that you have, when I start reading specific language of the ordinance, you have it in front of you. Does anyone mind? I've highlighted the sections that I'm going to be talking about, and it's just a couple.
I'll take one.
Fair enough. I'm sure you can. So I want to start a little bit at the beginning of the ordinance. And I appreciate the fact that we've actually started talking about the ordinance. The guts of this analysis is the standards that we've talked about, the standards for demolition request review. Before we get to the standards, there is a portion of the ordinance, particularly if you look on page 4 of 8, there's a section at the top of the page that's highlighted called commission analysis. So in that commission analysis, there are some things that are supposed to occur. And as you can see, what it says is prior to the public hearing, for purposes of reviewing a demolition application, the next step is supposed to be the preservation planner on behalf of the commission is to conduct an analysis of the submitted documents and a written summary of the site visit as part of a written report containing preliminary findings on the historic, architectural, and aesthetic significance of the improvements. There is, in connection therewith, there is intended to be an analysis of essentially the consultation with the preservation planner, the City of Geneva building official, the code enforcement officer, and the chief of police, and the fire chief. And the purpose of that is, as it relates to the standards, as it relates to the specific standard of whether this is, the building structure or improvement constitutes a hazard. So there was supposed to be a site visit with a staff group and a report provided as it relates to the safety of the building. Unfortunately, there was a comment made that there's been no evidence that that occurred. There's no evidence that that occurred because the city declined to actually make that investigation. The city took the position that it's not required to do that investigation, and that the property was not occupied, and therefore if the property is not occupied, the issue of, notwithstanding the issue of public safety, there was no significant safety concerns. So I just want to make it clear that we did request that that inspection occur, and the inspection did not occur because the city declined. And I'm going to go through each of those standards, but I want to identify a couple other, or address a couple other comments. Under 10.6.10, particularly Section B, which, as I said, is the guts, there is a very specific consideration to be thought through. And what it says under 10.6.10B, the Historic Preservation Commission shall not approve the proposed demolition permit unless it corrects one or more of the following conditions. Now, I'm going to put that another way, all right, because that is like a kind of a double negative. Put another way, it's the commission shall approve a demolition request if one or more of the following standards are met. So I want to look at the 10.6.10B standards, which have already been mentioned. I talked about number one. We tried to do the inspection and the city declined to do so. So be it. The building structure, object improvement, or site is a deterrent to a major improvement program. There was a comment made that there was no evidence on the record that that actually occurred. In fact, as I think staff is aware, there were inquiries, there have been inquiries by qualified developers who would like to develop the entire corner. Unfortunately, with the current status of this property as it is, over 5 years that has gone on, the developers who have indicated an interest are not interested in taking on an obligation under this kind of uncertainty. That corner cannot be developed until this issue is resolved. Number three, the retention of the building, structure, object, improvement, or site will cause undue economic hardship. I want to break that, again, in my mind, the entire analysis of what we're here for, the entire analysis comes down to this section. And I want to talk a little bit about that and break it out into two pieces, because that provides some clarity. Part A is there an undue economic hardship? Part B is, are there feasible alternatives? And have those feasible alternatives been exhausted? As I've said, at the time this property was acquired, the landmark ordinance in its current form did not exist. As it exists today, the city's own expert estimates the current value of the property is likely not what it once was, irrespective of whether there's a dispute as to the amount. But right now, the practical reality is the owner of this property has virtually no control over what can be done with this piece of property. The value of the property, at a minimum, has been affected, And even if we set that aside, all feasible alternatives to eliminate the financial hardship have, over a 5-year period, have clearly been exhausted. We've had people come in and do significant analysis of what it's going to take to pick the building up and move it. Qualified contractors have said it can't be done.
Can I interrupt 1 second?
Absolutely.
Then why do you have a for sale sign on there for
Because
$1
maybe there's
and that
some-
it has to be moved?
Two things, two reasons. Number one of the standards under the ordinance is that we've exhausted all available options, including, and the words of the ordinance, including the sale of the structure. So quite frankly, the thought process was, if we don't put a for sale sign, the commission is going to say you did not exhaust all your options. And we were legitimately attempting to incentivize more people to come and say, listen, can we do it? And we had people who were legitimately interested and tried very hard to see what's it going to take for us to move this, and can it be done without destroying whatever is left? It hasn't happened. The city expert has made, as you know, a host of presentations, and at the end of the day, I think we can all agree what his testimony really is.
Who's expert, or who?
The city's expert, the Tesca and Planera.
Okay,
Okay?
I just wanted to make sure you were
Yes, the
clear
two
about.
individuals who gave their testimony have specifically said, this can be developed, but it can only be developed in the event that a private-public partnership is established. I don't know if it's been made clear or not, but the city, right now, it's just us. There's been no TIF consideration. In fact, as far as we know, there is no availability of TIF funds. The expert has specifically said, this can be a successful project, but only in the event of a public-private partnership. That partnership doesn't exist. There is nothing on the table. Hence the demolition request. But if I may,
Aren't you putting the cart in front of the horse? You made the demolition request, and I think, did the city say then, you've got a demolition request on the table?
So-
We need to let this process work its way through, and then, because what they, I don't know, I mean,
so we're talking a little bit chicken and the egg.
we are talking chicken and the egg, and who's chicken and who's the egg? I don't know.
I don't disagree. But from a practical perspective, if the city of Geneva said, we want to save that building, we're willing to work with you on saving that building, and here are the TIF funds that we have allocated. Has that occurred? I can tell you right now, the answer is no.
I have a question. I mean, aren't the TIF funds that might be available based on the development that you
Right,
put
but
forward to
those are
the city?
those
So
are
you've just put forward basically nothing to the city at this point.
No, that is- it's
other than a
absolute-
pro forma for a building that I think you never intend to build.
Were you not part of the charrette?
I watched all the charrette. I read all the documents about that.
So that was the exact purpose of the charrette. The charrette literally, we hired people to come in and say, this is exactly what can happen to this property. And this is how it can economically and feasibly be done properly.
And so
And the city declined.
right, well, we'll get to that, but
But that's a choice
in the
they're entitled to
financials
make.
of the development, of that development that you put forward, was there a line item for TIF funds that might be available from the city?
There were definitely extensions of pro forma amounts that may be available based on developments, yes.
How much was that?
Again,
Maybe we could ask someone that might know that.
absolutely,
Okay, well, that's probably a good
absolutely.
question.
I mean, that'd be great, but that's not
Well-
on the table right
Well,
now.
of course it's not on the table right now, because the building that you proposed to build and brought forth to the city
We didn't-
was declined, not because of the blacksmith
Mr.
shop.
Chairman, point of order, is this a testimony from the public, or are we now into open debate here?
Fair.
We're not
I'm
really
really confused.
We're not into debate. I think.
Well, we sure are.
Well, I think
We
we should.
sure are.
We should, I think asking the applicant direct questions is not debate. So.
Well, this
Yeah.
is more than direct
Well, I'm
question.
trying to get to the dollar amount, or the fact that there was money offered by the city, or at least proposed by the
Well,
city, for
let's just-
development of that property.
Well, we can hash that out during our deliberation.
Let me answer one question and clarify one thing that's really important. That was not our building. That was not our building.
What do you mean? You brought it forth to the
No,
city
no,
council?
I'm sorry, but that wasn't. The charrette was just examples of what could be brought forward. I'm happy to let Mr. Patzelt testify. We were all there. That was not our building. That was, here is an
So
example.
this is debate, but I'll take your point there, but I won't
Okay.
debate it.
I think it needs to be
don't agree.
clarified that the charrette process was paid for 100% by the city. The city did,
After they turned your proposal down,
it was a 50-50 partnership, and if whatever came out of the charrette, the consultants that were hired by the city, those were not Shodin consultants, the city selected those consultants, whatever came out of the charrette, if the charrette, the city did not approve what was what was produced by the charrette, the city would pay. If Shodin didn't build what was produced during the charrette, Shodin would pay. So it was to me, an open process. The city's consultants selected what was designed, was not, again, not our architects. The city did not approve that.
participated though.
Sure, so did much of the public. So there's many people participating.
It was a different proposal that ultimately got put forth to the city council from the one that was recommended by the charrette team, the public involved charrette team.
I disagree with you. The charrette team brought forward the proposed project.
No, that is not true.
I think that we need to continue on this portion of the charrette portion is not really, we're not rehashing their charrette at this time either.
It's hard. It's hard to have a conversation about sort of everything that's occurred over 5 years and not hit some of those points. So I appreciate the
Points
question.
of contention, absolutely.
All right, and I'm doing my best to answer them as best I can.
You want to set the record straight? You know, I disagree with what you're
Right.
stating as far as
I
correcting the
understand.
record.
I understand. And I understand that all of this is a function of reviewing the actual standards that are set forth in the actual ordinance. And it's very hard when we talk about those standards, because those standards are all set in the standards for demolition request review. There is a fair amount of subjectivity, and there are a fair amount of facts. And really, again, my goal and my objective is to simply try to get as many of the actual facts on the record as I can. Having said that, I think it's important that we review very quickly something that's up on the screen. So at some point during the landmarking process, there were questions about what happens when property is landmarked, just generic questions. Staff put up on the Historic Preservation website what is not involved once granted landmark status. As you can see, once a property receives landmark status, it does not require the property owners to restore a piece of property. That's what that document says. And that's exactly what we're here talking about right now. It also says it does not require the property owner to make improvements or alterations to a piece of property. Well, From what I hear, that's exactly what we're talking about. And it does not otherwise control or limit the use of the property. At the end of the day, we're stuck. Until there is a resolution to this issue, there is no path forward. And I want to digress for just a minute. We talk about, and this is the last, we talk a lot about we call this the blacksmith shop. I'm hoping all of you have reviewed the original report that staff put together back in 2018. The only reason I'm referencing that is because pursuant to the original report about the historic chronology of this property that we're calling the blacksmith shop, literally, the report itself, in 1886, the Alexander blacksmith shop disappeared. This is staff's own report, that the blacksmith shop, as of 1886, no longer existed. So there's a point at which we all have to look at ourselves and say, what are we fighting to save? So I really want to challenge all of you to look at all the information that's been provided and to look closely at all the information that's been provided and the actual language of the ordinance. I know everyone's sick of looking at it, and I know everyone's sick of talking about this, but the actual language of the ordinance has some significance. At the end of the day, the demolition request meets, all we have to meet is one of the four criteria, one. Your own expert indicated that without TIF funds, this project is not feasible. We meet that standard, and because we meet that standard, the demolition permit needs to be approved. And I'm happy to answer any more questions.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
If a demolition request is withdrawn, can it be reapplied again?
Is it subject to the one-year rule, that once it's withdrawn, we have to wait a year?
That's his understanding, yes.
Okay, so I guess my question is, if the commission staff said to, you're making a big point about you had no TIF money, and was stated that, okay, well, you have a demolition request active, and they can't review for TIF money because you've got an active demolition request, so why not remove it and then find out what the TIF money is available?
So I guess the question becomes, I can't bring it back for a year, and we've already been at this for 5 years, and no TIF money has been forthcoming. So at what point does somebody have to make a decision?
But at the same
How many other TIF requests have you made other than the ones in October and going forward in the last, since the demolition was made?
This isn't rocket science. We've
Well,
been
no, I
talking
mean-
about this for 5 years.
Have there been 5 years of TIF money requests?
No, I haven't directed anybody to every month for 5 years.
No,
send a TIF
I'm
request.
curious. I'm curious of whether that you've said that's been going on for 5 years, and I'm trying to understand that you said that, and then when the demolition permit comes in, you say, well, we need TIF money to do this project.
If the stone structure is intended to be saved, and this is part of a larger development, irrespective of what I say, irrespective of anything I say, the Tesca people were very specific. It can only be done as part of a public-private partnership. That is not on the table.
But my point is that if to apply for TIF to find out if it's possible to do that project, and you have to withdraw the demolition request, Granted, you can't reapply again for another year, but testimony was just given that they could do nothing to this property for several years, and it's going to gain value anyway because of the market in Geneva. So what's the big deal?
The big deal is, at some point, enough is enough. And it's time for everybody to step up and say, yes, 5 years of looking at that building as a gateway to Geneva is not in the best interest of the community.
But you're stating that you can't do anything unless we know what the TIF money is from the city, but at the same time, you're not willing to withdraw the demolition request to be able to find out what that number is. And once again, by your own testimony of your client, they could leave it an empty lot and it's going to gain in value. So what's wrong with rolling the dice for a year, see what the TIF is? If you don't like it, then you put the demolition request in. You've already been doing this for 5 years. 6 is not exactly a big deal.
So, again, under the ordinance and under the terms of the ordinance, the specific language of the ordinance, you have the absolute right to make some kind of a recommendation to that effect. You have the right to recommend that, that the city recommend that the city provide information as to the developer regarding what TIF funds are available, or those are recommendations that you can make. I'm just telling you what the fact is right now, and there's nothing on the table, and there hasn't been anything on the table during this entire time.
Well, there's nothing on the table because you won't allow it.
Won't allow what?
By withdrawing your demolition request. They can't do the TIF.
So we're back to the chicken and the egg. So if the
Which egg do
city
you
wants
want?
to save this, then let's talk about funds. Right?
Fine, we'll withdraw the demolition request.
Or we
And
can
then we can go through the process.
or we can simply continue it again.
Maybe that's
But
what
we
happened.
probably
Okay, I think we get
the gist.
the point of your argument. I think we understand your argument, but
Are there any?
I don't.
I do have a question
Sure.
for you. Only because Chodine has done such wonderful things in Geneva. I mean, that's a given. They truly, truly have. So based on an article that I read from March of 2014 that was in the Patch, it said Chodine family committed to preserving historical integrity of the mill race and property. So initially, from this article and from what I'm hearing, you were really on board with saving that little dilapidated Alexander thing. What changed over that, and why is it now such a point of anger that this little building get destroyed? I mean, and you guys are so creative in what you do. I don't understand why.
So it's, first off, it's not anger. Over the years, since 2013, 2014, we have learned and studied and looked at, and that really started with the charrette process. During the charrette process, the consultant that was hired at that time included a structural engineer, and the architect that was hired really brought to light the condition or inadequate condition of the structure, including statements of that structural engineer, again, not our structural engineer, that no additional load, structural load, could be applied to the top or on top of that existing structure. And
I would like to just state that most buildings are that way. You usually cannot add a second floor onto an existing building unless it's designed to be that. So I think that might be, adding additional load is the key word there.
I can tell you that's what the structural report said.
Yes, I understand
by
what
the
that,
consultant, that no additional load could be applied. So your question is, what has happened since 2013-14? And the short answer to that is we have learned much more about the condition of the structure and the inability to do much much of anything with it. Even during the charrette process, the architect, structural engineer, and that team came forward with some ideas to reuse and repurpose the stone into a proposed building, or perhaps some monumentation or some entry gate features or something of that sort to repurpose the materials that remain there. And that was put forward to the city council as part of that package by the charrette team, and it was all denied. But still elements of that, taking portions of the stone, taking portions of the building, incorporating it into something, that could certainly be done.
Thank you.
Okay. Did you conclude? Is that the conclusion of your response, or your?
Yeah,
Okay,
thank you.
thank you. Yeah, I think, I guess with that, is there a motion to close the public hearing for the proposed demolition and de-designation of 4 East South State Street, HPC case 2022-079 and 2280?
I so move.
Can I get a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we can have a little discussion, but we'll make our deliberations on the 15th of August. But we do need a roll call. Did you have something to add, Lisa? Not at all. Okay.
Jensen,
Yes.
McManus,
Aye.
Phillips,
Aye.
Solomon,
Aye.
Stazen,
Aye.
Zelmer.
Aye. Okay. That closes the public hearing, and we will deliberate on August 15th. I think we'll take a 5-minute break and start again at 8:20. I think we are back, and we are going to go to the next item on our agenda. And I have to find that item, I'm sorry. That's the wrong one. Hold on. Let me get to the front.
On the other side of your
The
agenda.
the next item is,
Over your agenda, it's there. Oh, no, it's not.
no, it's not. I got many agendas. Okay, the next item is a review of conceptual development plans for 101 West State Street, case number 2023-063. Michael, you want to take it?
Thank you, Chairman Zelmer. The project 101 West State Street is located in the Central Geneva Historic District, listed in the National Register of Historic Places, and also located in approximately the east of center of the local Geneva Historic District. This building is familiar to the commission. However, the representatives tonight are a new party who's looking at the development of this property. And so they are coming forward with a concept review to make sure they're on the correct path towards making a successful project. As you're aware, the building is the FS Rate building, but it dates back to the 1850s, specifically 1853 was the stone structure that replaced an earlier building on this corner, so it's been a commercial corner since 1837. In 1892, a fire occurred in the building, and the front of the building collapsed as part of that fire damage. The facade was rebuilt and was in place by 1893. However, while the storefront openings are the historic openings from 1893, the storefronts themselves have been remodeled over time. As part of the 1893 remodeling, the floor on the east side of the building was lowered 2 feet. I'm sorry, on the west side of the building was lowered 2 feet. And that unit, which formerly was the Flagstone Restaurant, was remodeled again most recently in 1946 to its current configuration. The east section was heavily remodeled in 1935 by Martin Seastrom, one of our local contractors, for the opening of the Little Owl restaurant. At that time, a later large front porch was removed, the wood bulkhead was removed below the storefront, and a concrete bulkhead was installed in its place. And then in the 1970s, that facade was, or that storefront was renovated to its present condition with the atrium look of the glass storefront. This is a historic view of the rate building around 1900. A couple of things to point out, as I mentioned, that the building overall, the major openings are all intact, and the building is fairly intact from its 1893 inception. A couple of things that were pointed out in previous reviews for this building and have been addressed in the applicant's proposal are the large storefront windows that flank a central opening, so each storefront's divided essentially into 3 equal spaces. The windows themselves have a exceptionally deep transom that aligns with the tops of the historic doors. And then the storefront windows themselves are divided into 2 sections each. So that's a kind of a summary of the exterior. The exterior also features a unique buff-colored cream brick, pressed metal window lintels that have a small pediment at the center, and then the decorative stamped metal cornice and small mansard roof. So the team includes Nicholas Mannheim, who was the architect for the previous applicants. So you will see similarities and resurrection of some of the drawings. However, I want to point out that there have been modifications made since the last time you've seen this. So essentially, the project is staying the same. With a few minor changes. There will be a new accessible entrance at the center of the building, which does require work in the public right-of-way, as was required before, so that has not changed. Most significantly, the storefronts have been reconfigured in this proposal to provide for equal openings, matching, again, what the historic order of the storefront elements were. The project is still being divided into 2 phases, essentially. So the area highlighted with the red rectangle is basically phase 1 work, which is sufficient to get the operations of the building up and going. It includes the rehabilitation of the storefronts, again, preserving the tripartite division of each storefront. However, as was proposed in the past, there will not be central entrances in each of those storefronts, but the sole entrance to the building will now be located at the near center of the building, which formerly served as the entrance to the second floor. Other elements that are being proposed as part of that storefront renovation is to reinsert a recessed panel bulkhead below the storefront windows, again picking up on the architecture of the late 1890s and early 1900s. Those items identified with blue rectangles are an unidentified later phase, which includes much of the work that's not related to getting the restaurant use into the first floor. It includes things such as repairing and painting the upper parapet, making window modifications and restoration at the second floor, and correcting some structural items at the southeast corner. So just quickly going through the project that was included in your packet. The upper view is the only view we have really of the historic bulkheads, so you can kind of see what the historic bulkheads look like, particularly on the left portion behind the woman. You can see the detail of that bulkhead. And then just to show you what the existing condition is at each of the west unit, which is on the left, and the east unit, which is on your right, showing that they have slightly different configurations based on the different remodelings of the building. And then the drawing on the far right is the concept proposal for the new bulkhead, which shows it as not just applied moldings, but an actual recessed bulkhead panel to pick up on the historic details. In previous proposals, the central door was somewhat of an issue, and I want to point out that this concept plans reflect what the desires of the commission have been stated in the past. So the current door is a standard door that has been installed within the historic jam. There is a enlarged view at the top center of what the historic central door looked like, and they've replicated that closely with a proposed three-panel door in the lower drawing below the historic photograph. It's important to note that the historic transom has been retained in this proposal, and the door details that have been provided at this conceptual level show that that the door is actually being mounted within the historic jam and not a pre-hung door being inserted within the jam, which was one of the requests of the commission under previous reviews. Also, the concept plans that have been submitted to date show that the historic column locations will be relocated under the rondelles in the storefront lintel. If those of you who were on the commission in the past recall, that was one of the questions that the previous examples had not, or previous recommendations or requests had not aligned those columns in their historic location. There are a few things to point out that concern staff, and that is that the easternmost store lintel has deflected. As I've shown with that red line, you can see the extent of the deflection in that storefront lintel. And it's further evidence because that gap that has ensued over time has been filled with grout, and a stiffener plate has been added to the east end of the lintel. So there is some concern from a preservation standpoint that needs to be addressed. The east elevation is largely being proposed for a future phase. So again, you can see that the bulk of the project is in a future phase, but it's still being identified here at this point in the conceptual level. So I just want to address a few things. The details of many of those second phase items are not fleshed out yet. So I just wanted to point out some of the things that, both for the applicant and for the commission, that the building is dirty now. It does deserve some masonry cleaning. It's also, as has been pointed out in the past, there's been a lot of inappropriate repointing over time with a combination of hard mortars and gaps that are mortar joints that have opened up and have been buttered closed instead of having the tight joints that were there originally. It's interesting to note that the historic condition of the mortar joint is an actual raked joint, but patches have been made either as flush mortar joints or concave mortar joints. So there is a variety of finish treatments on the existing mortar joints. Again, in that undetermined second phase, there is deterioration of the limestone windowsills, which is not uncommon. We've had a couple of recent projects in the last few years that have requested either do consolidation of stone or replacement of stone, and that's not been identified which direction at this point. That will be in that later future phase. The windows are called for restoration in the future. Again, you can see the condition of the windowsills on the left. Also, the previous owners had removed the historic wood molding around the windows and replaced it with a standard brick mold, as you can see in the second middle image. And then there is a good section of what the historic molding was. So it went from being a very bold molding around the second floor windows to a pretty flat molding here. The stamped metal cornice survives in pretty good condition. However, there are some missing panels. Again, I don't, at this point in the conceptual review, it doesn't appear that an exhaustive survey of the cornice has been completed. But again, that is called out for a later phase, so there are some there's time for discussion on that. So as I mentioned, there's some panels in the panelized brackets that are missing. If you look to the left of the pediment, the central pediment, the left plate has been replaced. The right plate is the original stamp plate, but the left plate is just an infill plate that's been added at some point. There is some structural loss that occurs at the southeast corner of the building. The current group has inherited this situation. The previous developers were made aware that the concrete steps were poured underneath the limestone building, and the request of the motion approving the work by the previous owners included a requirement that a specification and a proposal be provided for at least staff review, if not commission review, for the repair of this corner. The most that we can determine was done was that a mortar patch was put on this corner without separating the building from the concrete walk or replacing structural material. This is actually being identified as a Phase 2 repair by the current team. Along with masonry, we've got two types of masonry on this. You've got brick masonry and you've got stone masonry laid up in roughly coursed ashlar pattern. As you can see from the images, there is a lot of, again, different types of patching occurring on the stone building that will need to be addressed in that later phase with a variety of patching mortar materials. It's important to note there is evidence across the stone portion of the building that a different type of mortar bead was used, and that would be a beaded type of mortar joint on the limestone building. So there are character elements that would be addressed or should be addressed in the second phase. So with that, that's a brief introduction to the building. Like I said, it's basically a two-phased project, and the first phase is really dealing with the storefront. At this time, I would invite Joseph Toda of Tapville Social, Mike Smith of Tapville Social, Gary Grant with the Woodmont Company, and Nicholas Mannheim to come to the lectern and add to the presentation and answer any questions the commission may have.
Good evening. Thank you for having us tonight. I'm excited to bring this project back to you guys. I think we addressed the commission's concerns from the previous iterations a couple years ago when I was back here before. So I'm excited with this new group to bring what I hope is an example of what we'd like to do, meeting a lot of the historical details, working with you guys over the last couple of years. I think Mr. Lambert kind of explained everything. The corner piece, I will add, we have engaged a structural engineer and contractor to look into that and see how we can fix that. So hopefully that'll be part of one of our forthcoming packages then. Also, as Mr. Lambert mentioned, we have a structural engineer to look at the lintels as well as moving those columns to the previous historical locations.
Are you looking for us to comment on just the red box or the whole project, I guess, would be our question, one of my questions.
Well, proposed the red box is kind of how we proposed it last time, was coming in there with two phases. The first phase is to get the restaurant up and running and generating income.
Sure.
And then coming back to repair and...
Would it be two separate permits, basically?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. Then we'd look at it at a later date.
Correct.
Too.
So the hope is that you guys could opine upon this so that we can make any changes if we need to. We're looking to go in for permit within the next few weeks here.
Okay.
Where you guys would get our full set of permit documents, but we're trying to get ahead of the curve here to see if there's any questions or concerns at this time from you guys,
Sure.
so that we could hopefully address those in our permit package.
Sure. One question I have is the windows themselves, the large storefront windows on the non-transom ones, are those operable windows or are they going to be fixed windows?
They are fixed now.
Okay.
Yep. So we took that out of the equation.
Yeah. That's good because the mullions get quite thick with the operable ones.
To clarify that also, Commissioner, or Chairman Zelmer, I omitted to say that it's a standard aluminum section storefront, so it's standard aluminum components. There's no color identified yet, but it's not a wood storefront, it's an aluminum storefront to replicate the pattern of the historic storefront.
Okay. Any other questions from the commission?
What's the yellow line in the red box?
The yellow line, if you recall from the previous iterations, the transoms were much narrower,
Okay.
shallower, and looking at the historic photographs, the commission requested that transom be brought down to the spring line of the arch where the historic transoms were located,
Okay.
and they've accommodated that.
Okay, so that just designates the, and originally, the windows on the right were always narrower than the windows on the left. I look at the size, one's 6'7", the other's 7'4", and the middle door was always, I've seen this building 100 times, I've never paid that much attention.
I was thinking the same thing,
But that doorway
George.
was always centered asymmetrically in the, that's odd. But that's history. I would like to go, if I may, to the construction documents where that lintel is shown in detail with the grouting on that. There, okay. In my definition, from my structural experience, deflection is usually a bow or a curve somewhere. I would call this differential settlement, being that the one corner is sagging. And generally, you know, I can't help being an architect, but generally, when something settles a little bit, you could stuff some more grout in there or make an attempt to raise up that lintel so that corner would actually be square. Have you looked at, is this your only option to solve this?
Well, we're waiting for the structural engineers to
Okay.
finalize their drawings.
Yeah, because just stuffing more in there isn't aesthetically going to help that too much.
No, we're looking to fix
And I
the
think there's
solution,
something wrong with that corner. On that 1900 photograph, Michael, there's a line on that corner there. Is that a crack or a wire?
I believe that's a
That
crack in the,
emanates from
I believe
the
that's a crack in the photograph, not in the, I think it's in the photograph, not in the
Oh,
building.
it's not in the wall?
On the brick, yeah, 'cause
That's sure coincidental, isn't it?
it does kind of
That
line up
dark
with the
line?
edge of the,
Yeah, right from the edge of the lintel coming
Yeah.
straight down?
I thought the same thing originally, but it is, actually appears to be
Okay.
a fold in the photograph.
All right. Thank you.
I will say one thing to your point, Commissioner Stazen, that when I looked back at the minutes from previous reviews of this property, one of the concerns was with that, whether you want to call it deflection or you want to call it differential settlement, is the idea of what, if they're doing an aluminum storefront window system, and that's not able to be or is not brought back into level, that there may be some extra trim required that the commission may want to look at how that's trimmed out if that is an unsquare opening. But
Yeah,
that was a
well,
comment that
actually,
was
that
made.
decorative panel is moved slightly too. It's a
Right.
jar, and if you just stuff something in there, it's going to be even more noticeable than it is right now. But yeah, I think there's something else wrong in that corner. It could emanate from where the stairs abutted the limestone and caused the deterioration below grade, not above, with the way the water drains. But that's another story. Thank you.
I had a question. Has the use of the central door as the egress point for the entire building, basically, I know there's a door in the back, has that undergone any kind of fire department review or?
Not since the first, I guess, issue of permit. So we had permit for the interior before the previous owner, so that went through the reviews of the city.
So they were okay with that?
Correct. And we got a permit from IDOT to do the work to the ADA ramp as well.
Just seems like a real pinch point to me for, you know, if there was a fire in the kitchen or something, for people to get out of that building through that 3-foot front door.
There's also a rear entry or rear exit in the rear of the building.
It's kind of hidden, though.
And there'll be a second one out of the kitchen as well, too.
That won't help if there's a fire in the kitchen.
No,
yes,
I'm
but-
I was just letting you know that there's
Yeah.
other points of exit.
The other thing, and Michael, you might be able to help with this, in that 1900 photograph, on the west side, that had a recessed entry in the center there, correct? So that's always been recessed from the time the facade was reconstructed, right?
Yes, both storefronts had recessed entrances until 1973. The west one was removed, or the east one was removed.
Does anybody have any concern about the history associated with that and taking that away?
I think some of that might have been because there were two separate functions of the space, so they had two separate entries. And this is all going to be one
That's
whole
correct.
space, one whole restaurant. I don't know, was it like that back in, 5 years ago? I don't even remember.
Yeah.
It's always had a recessed, on the west side, a recessed entrance.
The previous discussion by the commission was as long as the tripartite division was retained,
Yeah.
it could always be returned to a central entrance, so it was not creating a permanent condition. It could be, that central area could be taken out and turned back into an entrance at some other point if somebody chose to do that down the road. But I think the concern, and I did go back and read the minutes from 2021, that the concern was to keep the divisions of the storefront, and what happened within those divisions was not as much of a concern to the commission as preserving those historic divisions.
Right, right. And I believe, I was here for that conversation. And it feels like a lot of what we gave you was feedback. How long has it been? Like a year? I don't even
Couple
remember.
years.
Has it? Oh,
It was
okay, well.
April of 2021, if you would like to know the date.
Thank you. Thank you. But no, it does feel as though you've taken on a lot of the suggestions that we gave during that time. Can you tell us about the front door?
The proposal be similar to what we were going to do last time, which was have a door manufactured to mimic the details, the historical details.
I see.
So that hasn't changed.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
And I believe Mr. Lambert mentioned too that we are also recessing it back in there, so it's not just a fixed jam.
Okay, thank you.
I'm cool.
Okay. Nothing? Well, I think that, we're, what I'm picking up from the commission is that you're heading in the right direction, and I don't know whether you've got, I think that that's the correct, you're heading in the right direction, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank
Unless
you.
you've got any specific questions for us.
No. What you guys do.
Okay.
We're good then. Thank you.
Thank you so
Yep.
much. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
I think we're happy to see this coming before us again.
We are
Yeah,
quite
really,
happy
yeah.
because we're like to see,
I've been excited to bring it back to you guys.
yeah,
We're thirsty.
yes, we are. Okay. The next item is review of a building permit application at 424 South Street. Case number 2023-059. Michael?
Thank you, Chairman Zelmer. The project at 424 South Street is located in the far southwestern corner of the local historic district and is located in the Central Geneva Historic listed in the National Register of Historic Places. The property is a small bungalow that appears to have been built sometime between 1917 and 1930. Sanborn maps do not go to this section of the city until after 1930. But the house appears to have been built by Neil and Ruth Anderson, who may have used it as rental property. It's a very modest, small bungalow, and as I said, may have been used as rental property. The proposal is to really not to alter the front facade, but to alter the point of location to the historic porch. So the current door, which is a alteration of the original east elevation of the porch, is shown in the upper right-hand corner, and the existing west elevation is shown in the lower right. The porch includes multi-divided lights, so typically 4/1s, which again are typical of the period of the construction of the house. And the proposal before you is to simply switch out the historic windows from the west elevation to the east elevations and put in a new door and window, repurposed window on the west elevation. So the project is really the small yellow area on these two diagrams. The blue area is are the stoops, the historic stoop on the left and the proposed stoop on the right. And just because you did have this in your packet, I did want to explain that there is a substantial addition being built to the rear of this home, but it is offset from the main bungalow and is not subject to review by the Historic Preservation Commission. So, as I mentioned, the elements that are being affected by this proposal, on the west side, those three windows that are circled in red on the lower right are being moved to the east elevation. Excuse me. And on the at the lower left of the larger image, you'll see there is a small concrete cheek wall at the side that was part of the stoop on that location. That will be removed and is not being proposed to be reconstructed at the new location. Again, here are the architectural drawings. Again, the front elevation is not going to change. The street elevation is very minimally, if impacted at all. The east elevation will include the relocation of the three current west windows. And the west elevation will include a repurposed window from the living room and then a new fiberglass therma-tru door, which will have a full light. I think it's important to note that the entrance was on the east side probably from the time it was constructed. However, in 1967, a house was built to the east of the property and may have been subdivided off of this lot. And at that time, sometime between 1967 and 1973, a driveway was put in on the west side of the home and making the access to the porch having to walk around the house via this stone walk. And so the purpose of this request is to move the entrance adjacent to the decades-old driveway. So with that said, at this point I would turn the podium over to Sean Gallagher, who's the architect, and let him fill in the blanks.
Good evening. We're on, yes? Good.
Yep.
Just some quick background. Karen has lived in the house for less than a year now, and her grandson and daughter will be sharing some space in the house with her, so it's sort of facilitating the need for this addition to the back, which is a single-story bedroom addition. To the front, with the driveway as it is to the west, we are simply sort of flipping the pieces from the east to the west and to the west to the east. So the windows that are currently on that west side, we're going to reuse them, the exact same units. We will be removing that concrete step and cheek wall. There have been some issues with back pitch on that, so there's a lot of water getting into that corner as well, so there's some deterioration in that corner of the house. So Removal of it will include the restoration of the foundation. If you had a chance to get out to the house, you may have noticed that the foundation is parged and then has striations or delineations of block on it. So somebody has sort of scored in mortar joints to make it look like block. So we're going to match all of that. So we're going to pick up those same details. In terms of siding, there will be some siding replacement on the east and the west sides. All of that will be wood to match existing with laps matching, so it will all be natural wood material, all matching. So actually from that north elevation, the only real change you are seeing is the removal of the cheek wall and the stair and the addition of the steps leading down. As you walk up and down the sidewalk, of course, you're seeing a little bit different profile for the windows and the entry. And as Michael noted, with the remodeling at the back, we actually will be able to repurpose one of the windows from that back portion from the living room and use it on that west side adjacent to the entry door there. So all the windows in that porch will be original to the house and really won't be changed at all, other than just simply alternating it. So now Karen and her daughter and grandson can just simply exit the car and get into the house directly from that west side. So with that, I'd certainly like to open it to any questions you might have.
What is the current door? What is that? Is it historic? What is it?
Right, so it's a metal panel, insulated, and it's a 6-light unit with a raised panel base. So
what about
it's a modern door.
The existing door?
That is the existing door.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So the existing door is a metal panel door.
Okay.
The door we're putting in it.
So it's not a historic
No,
door?
no, no. And it's also, it's a shorter light. So it's got a grill of 3/3, and it has raised panels, but it is a metal modern door.
Okay, gotcha. All right, thank you.
Just, could you explain again, the reason for moving that interior window to the outside next to the door?
Yeah, so there's, let's look at that if you would. There's enough real estate on that wall that that door would just be floating in the wall, if you get my meaning. If I just had a door, then I would probably want to introduce modern side lights, and I've got a perfectly beautiful window that matches all the windows on that porch. So instead of tossing it, I wanted to reuse it, so.
So there's no side lights on the existing door on
No,
the east side, right? There's nothing on
I don't
the
know that
sides
we have a
of the door.
photograph of that, but it just floats in the middle of the wall. The demo, well, I don't know that you have the, you could, yeah, so you can just make it in the upper right image, or upper right on yours. So it just floats in the middle of the wall.
Okay, I was just curious.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Well, I really appreciate that you are reusing the windows, the original windows, and putting them on the other side, and understand that the door is not original, so there's no reason to reuse that door.
Yeah, had it been original, we certainly would have embraced its reuse, but, yeah.
Any other comments?
I'm cool.
George?
No.
No? Kevin? Lisa? No, I don't. Okay. With that, can I get a motion to approve? Oh.
I signed the document.
Oh. Oh, you signed the document.
Public testimony.
Oh, did you, okay. Yeah, are you Karen Lando? No. You can come forward and,
Do you want to take care of this one first? Or
is this,
Is this for this property?
is it,
Oh, it is.
it is for this property?
Oh, okay.
Okay, come up and state your,
Are they done, the homeowners?
I believe they are, yeah.
My name is Patricia Cameron, and I'm the owner of the house directly and immediately west of this property. And I would like to hear how drainage issues have been addressed in the front. There's driveway on this home's lot, right up to the limit, that extends all the way back to where it starts to, the pitch starts to go down. And adding this extra concrete in the front, I've got concerns about the drainage, and it's not unfounded. Previous homeowners, last year was a light snow year, previous homeowners have found it difficult to dispose of adequately and then properly of snow on heavy snow days and snow falls, and have found it necessary to throw it over my fence and onto my property. And I, of course, think that's inappropriate, and I just would like to hear what kind of drainage studies have been done and the plan for moving that snow front and back. Okay. Okay. So I have a great concern about the increase in solid surfaces that go directly butt up against the foundation of that home to the property line. And then, I mean, I just wonder why alter a historic property and why move when you can achieve the same goal of accessing your home on the other side by simply moving the driveway, which would be a lot cheaper than moving it, and not that that's in my business, but moving a door and moving windows and so on. And the lot is wider on that side as well, so just move the driveway to accommodate the access to the door. And then, while it was mentioned that the deck on the back is placed so that it doesn't face the owner's yard, it faces my yard, and it's very difficult to put any kind of privacy up when there's a slope in the property. So I would now have two doors and a deck facing my house with a total violation of my privacy. I mean, I'm sympathetic to people's construction desires and alterations to their home, and I realize many of these things are within the letter of the law, but it's very intrusive and my privacy is being violated. There's no way to give me my backyard back. Thank you.
Okay.
Can I, just addressing that, I don't know, would that be something that would go before city council and maybe a body different than ours for something like that?
Yeah, I think the points that have been raised are not under the purview of the Historic Preservation Commission.
Right.
I do know that the building department will be reviewing this, and I believe there's a stormwater drainage application that's part of this project that will be reviewed by our Public Works Department. So again, while I understand your concerns, those are beyond the purview of the Historic Preservation Commission at this point. My understanding in talking with the building official is that this project does conform with zoning requirements and regulations. So it is, there's no variances being requested for this development or what have you. And Mr. Gallagher, you may want to speak to that more, because I know you've had conversations with both the planning department and the building department, but those issues have been raised are beyond what the Historic Preservation Commission is charged with looking at.
So she would get the opportunity to say this in a different forum?
No.
Well, I think she'd have to go to the building department and make sure that, and voice her concerns at this point, I would think.
Again, there's no variances being requested for this project. This
so-
is all by right development that's being proposed. And again, with the redevelopment of any of our properties in the historic district. We've had impacts before with neighbors and have been accustomed to either longstanding development or what have you. But my understanding from looking into this project is that this is all conforming with zoning and building regulations.
As part of our application, we were required to have engineering drawings executed. So our friends at Engineering Resource Associates did full engineering plans. We are not changing the existing driveway, and we are actually reducing the amount of impervious surface on the front. If you go back to the site plan,
We're going to have a site plan.
well, hang tight right there, that's fine. If you go back to that one, you'll notice there's a paved area.
Well, you're taking out the paved area in front there, right?
Yeah, the photograph you had there, Michael. Yeah, there you go. So, the whole paved area, which actually stitches the driveway back to the east doorway, that's being removed. And also there is a paved brick path that leads from the sidewalk all the way to that east entry that's being removed as well. And also a sidewalk that runs the entire length to the back. So in terms of impervious surface, we are actually reducing it in the front. And again, that driveway, we're not touching it at all. We just have wood steps, which actually the nice thing about the wood steps is they have gaps in them, right? So it's essentially a deck. And so there's gaps in the wood, so any rain or moisture that would fall into that would simply fall between the cracks in the deck.
So the entry steps won't be,
They're not impervious. They're not concrete. They're not solid. They're actually pervious.
okay.
So
Did you do any evaluation or think about moving the driveway to the other side? Was that part of the?
that never once factored into our thinking. And in fact, to do it, it would change the entire ability for us to actually stitch an entry to the back, because if you look at the floor plans for the first floor, access to the back mudroom would be essentially impossible the way the entry would work off of that doorway leading in. Right now, there's a rear doorway to the house that comes off of a deck. So as the natural path of circulation works, one might park and simply be able to walk along the side of the house into this rear mudroom. Alternatively, you could simply walk directly into the west entry from the front door as well. So the path has been made less circuitous in a way. And there is currently a deck that is occupying almost the footprint of this addition, about 2/3 of the addition's footprint. So in terms of, yeah.
I just want to make sure it's understood that a lot of that, besides the front piece, the sidewalk is on the other side that you're removing. And now I'm going to have two doors facing my home, and there's no deck facing the owner's yard at all. It faces my yard. And I'm concerned about the drainage in the front. Did you do a drainage study on the whole front and the back, or just the back?
They did the whole lot. So, I mean, when you do an engineering development, you look at in its entirety. It's not a piecemeal thing. I'm not sure that's where we're not involved with, figuring out the impervious requirements of what can be driveway and what can't be driveway and that sort of thing.
Understood.
So,
I just would say, why do we need to flip it all? I mean, the design could be that the mudroom is accessed on the other side just as easily as this side.
It's up to the homeowners.
yeah, I mean, there is,
But they can still access from their front door on that side.
It's
Well,
not your decision.
I understand that,
So
but I'm getting my privacy violated in a big way.
Well,
this forum is for.
I understand.
yeah, it's a difficult thing. So I think if you should talk to the building department to make sure that your concerns and that that they're the ones that, the building department will be doing an engineering review, and that's that forum to do that. Do you agree, Michael? He said yes. So, I understand your concerns, but again, it is, what we're looking at is specifically the flip of the porch from one side to the other. And as a historic commission, that's what we're looking at. And I don't see I haven't heard any concerns from the commission regarding that.
No, because I think we were getting ready to
To actually,
pass a motion.
yeah, yeah. So unless, yeah, go ahead.
I move to accept the building permit application for 424 South Street, case number 2023-059, the way that it was presented.
I second. Can you call the roll?
Jensen,
Aye.
McManus,
Aye.
Phillips,
Aye.
Solomon,
Aye.
Skazen,
Aye.
Zelmer.
Aye. Motion passed. Thank you. The next item on our agenda is review of building permit application for 15 South 6th Street. Case number 2023-062.
Thank you, Chairman Zelmer. 15 South 6th Street is a significant property located on the far western edge of the local Geneva Historic District and in the northwestern corner of the Central Geneva Historic District listed in the National Register of Historic Places. The property was built in 1892 as the Donaldson residence. The Donaldsons were Swedish immigrants who built this home behind their son's home, which faces James Street. The house is currently finished with aluminum siding, and with the recent storms, the roof and the siding were damaged and are being considered for replacement under an insurance claim. Additionally, the owners had contacted me approximately 4 or 5 years ago regarding a window replacement project and have been working towards a window replacement project since that time, following the steps and requirements of our window policy, which I'll talk a little bit more in just a moment. So as part of the siding replacement programs or projects, as you know, we typically ask for portions of the existing siding to be exposed to kind of be able to assess what the condition of the historic siding is. So the owners did remove or have removed the parts of the aluminum siding at the street facade at the end of June. Excuse me. In exposing the original siding, there's a couple of things that were revealed. One is the decorative gable has a herringbone type of treatment on the gable around a decorative window with clear and light blue glass. It's also exposed the condition of the water table and the existing trim on the building, and as well as the condition of the paint. I bring all those things to your attention because it helps to understand what the existing conditions are. If you have not been out there, I'm hoping you've all done a site visit, but if you have not, this will better clarify what the conditions are out there. So, as I mentioned, the gable has a herringbone treatment, and it's got a multi-light gable window there. The lower left shows when the aluminum siding was installed, the water table drip cap was knocked off by the aluminum siding installers. That's not untypical. It appears to be the most significant damage to the historic wood siding around the property. The historic window trim was preserved, as you can see in the middle image. The starter strips and J channels were installed around the historic wood window trim to preserve it and also to preserve the bed molding beneath the soffit. And then the other interesting thing about the, with the siding removal is the concern was raised about lead-based paint and what might be on the building. When the siding was removed, it showed the peeling paint, and curiously where all those arrow marks are, if you can look, you can see that it's blackened siding there. Those are where the nails that fasten the siding were located. And apparently this house was heat stripped sometime 30 to 40 years ago, and all of those places are where the nail overheated and slightly scorched the siding around it. So it appears that the paint is probably after 1978, and therefore after 1978, lead-based paint is not as much of a concern, but the paint has not been tested to my knowledge. It also suggests that there's only 2 layers of paint on the siding, 2 to 3 layers of paint on the siding before it was aluminum sided. So again, just some views around the house. You can see that the siding was installed around the historic elements, preserving the trim. And then there's the case of the windows themselves. The windows are in various states of repair or disrepair, whichever side of the fence you stand on. They are mostly painted shut. They are simple 1/1 windows with primarily replacement hardware on a good number of the windows. Many of the windows do not operate, or the ropes have been cut so that and the windows are painted shut. However, it's not only cosmetic issues that are instituting this window replacement request. As I said, on the left you can see the ropes are painted and the entire window is painted shut at the parting stop and what have you. The hardware is, like I said, is a replacement hardware in many cases, and it's only single glazed glazing. And then you can see the condition of the jambs on many of the windows. There is some rot in the window units, and that's important to note that not only are the jambs rotted, but you can see there is rot in the sash themselves. So the lower or the middle image there is a view looking at a section of the window casing that has cracked and rotted, and it's a fairly substantial split in the wood. The images on the far right are both looking up at the bottom of a window sash, these are very typical conditions. I will say I think it's 90-some photographs that the applicant submitted documenting all of the windows, and I've put in the general conditions because I didn't think you wanted to look at 90 windows with the same level of deterioration. So these are not unusual or isolated examples of the deterioration. These are consistent across the images that were provided for each of the windows in the building. And again, if you look at the middle photograph up above, you can see that the sash have become loose within the jamb, and they actually have a gap between the sash of many of the windows. So again, like I said, I did not want to put 90-some pictures of the windows, but I want to show you some of the conditions. Like I said, the windows, most of them, many of them do not operate because they've been painted shut, and you can see the condition of the bottoms of many of the sashes have rotted significantly as the house has been renovated over the years. So as part of this project, there is also a roof replacement being requested. However, that's an administrative review, so I just wanted to bring that to the point that this is a comprehensive exterior renovation. I also wanted to point out 2 other things, is that and I'm sure that the applicants will want to address this in greater detail, but the windows that are proposed are a full jamb replacement. So in other words, the entire historic window unit would be removed and a new window unit would be installed. That's only possible if the historic trim is removed. If the historic trim is not removed, if the commission believes that this is siding that should be restored per our window policy, then it would have to be a different type of window that would be installed in the window opening that would reduce the glass area slightly, but would still retain the 1/1 look. So again, as with many of the preservation issues that are discussed. There are give and take in any solution. And then lastly, as I said, the siding, it is a request for a siding replacement. Those of you who may have gone and stopped by the site, you can see that the wood is very tight in the parts that have been exposed. It's not exhibiting tremendous amounts of rot or deterioration around the siding that's been exposed, other than the deterioration at the water table. The proposal is to replace it with fiber cement siding. However, the fiber cement siding is not available in this exact exposure. It would be a slightly larger exposure. This is a 3-inch exposure roughly of the siding, and the narrowest that a fiber cement siding can be is 4 inches. So it would change, with new siding, would change the proportions of the historic building. And then lastly, the historic porch details are scheduled to remain. They will not be altered, so the 1892 porch details with the railing and the spandrel would remain as part of this renovation. So with that, I would like to invite Joyce Courtney of the Home Court, her daughter Jen Courtney, Jeff Rosier from G. Clem Roofing, and Mike Schmidt from Schmidt Exteriors to come up and cover any porch parts that I may have missed and explain your project in greater detail.
Okay, thank you, Michael.
And I can go backwards or forwards with any image you'd like me to bring up.
Okay, thank you. I'm Joyce Courtney, and I'm the owner of the Home Court Real Estate, and this is Jen, who runs the office and works with me. And so I bought this house 14 years ago, and I'm all about historic preservation for the city of Geneva. I love the character that it has. And when I bought this house in 2009, it was outside, was in complete disrepair. There was no driveway. The weeds were like thigh high. It was just completely not taken care of. And I think my neighbors would agree that I've improved the property a lot over the last 14 years. But a couple of things I did want to just clarify is in the report it said that the project is being funded by my insurance company, and it is not. They are covering the roof, and they will cover siding replacement, but they will not cover remediation, and we did find out today that it is lead-based paint. We have the results with us. So to do just to do the remediation of the paint alone, I got a quote, and it's over $35,000. And that does not include the restoration of any rotted boards. And I know this is showing the front, but on the side and in the back, where we did also remove different parts, like in the back, the wood was just pouring out ants and completely rotted. So the cost for remediation and restoration is unknown. I know it's well over $35,000, but it would be even to see if that type of material is available to restore that. And that's a huge concern for myself. Just I'm a small business owner, and like I said, the insurance will pay for the roof, but they will not replace deferred maintenance from a previous owner. Which the previous owner was allowed to cover it up with aluminum siding, and now the current code doesn't allow for aluminum siding, which is totally fine, but it's all on my expense because of deferred maintenance. So, and I had to get a demolition permit to take the siding off so that we could see what the wood looks like, but now, if I can't afford to restore it, I can't put the siding back either. So I just wanted to talk about those things. And also just in regards to the windows, and we can have you guys take a look at to what the windows would look like. But, I'm a business that represents clients, and we have business, financial, and legal information on our clients there, and we cannot secure the windows, and I do have a security system, but they're very easily, obviously, could be broken into. So that's a huge concern for myself also. So those are the main points, is I don't think I can't afford the restoration if my insurance will not cover it. And I don't know what the next steps would be if that was the case.
They will cover removing it?
They will recover replacing it. Like current siding is aluminum, so they'll take that off and they'll replace it, but we can't replace it with aluminum.
Correct.
So they will replace it, but they will not cover restoration and remediation because that was, like I said, deferred maintenance by a previous owner. So insurance will not cover that.
Are they removing the existing siding as part of their?
Yeah, they'll pay to have the siding removed and the hardy board installed. That was kind of like one of the products that was listed as accepted on the historic documents or whatever we saw. That's what they paid for. What they won't pay for is to scrape the home of lead-based paint and repair. They're paying for replacement.
Correct. Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry.
My name is Jeff. I'm with G. Clem Roofing. So, of course, again, aluminum siding being removed because you can't install hardy board siding against other old siding. It has to be a flat surface. The insurance company is paid to remove that as well. So, you were saying about the exposure of the siding. There are other products available. There's like a clear pine. They do make like a clear cedar that can have that same exposure. So I'm certain that we can get something incredibly close to what's currently there. I believe the exposure now is around 3.5 inches. So going to the hardy of 4-inch, I get that that's not exactly what's currently on the building. I was hoping that that would be close enough, but I'll let you guys make that determination. So.
Is it your
Jeff.
Sorry. Yes, sir.
you what is the status of the, in your opinion, what's the status of the siding that's there right now? Is it
What we can currently see.
It's hard to tell right now. I just think of the overall construction, it being from, what, 1800s, 1890s. A million nail holes in it now. The water table damage is there. We're definitely going to have to get into some wood repair there. From what I can tell, it looks okay, but a part I removed in the back was just pouring out ants. It was, you can't tell unless you remove it.
What we've done in the past is areas that are, I mean, our main concern is the street facade, to tell you the truth. And that's what we look to keep intact and historic as much as we can. And if there's other areas that need to be replaced or we're, you know, if they're rotten, they're rotten. I mean, that I just, so you have something from the insurance company saying they will not restore this. You have a letter of rejection or something to that effect?
Yes.
I
talked to them today, and he said we will not restore. We will not pay for restoration. I can get that in writing, but I did speak with them today.
Yeah.
Because I gave him the quote, and I told him, I said what the lead-based paint and that remediation came back at, and he was like, we will not pay for that.
And again, my thoughts, I get preserving, I know for one, we can keep the aesthetic, the same aesthetic as currently on the building now. We can get the same reveal. We can replace the top, whatever that decorative trim is up the top. I can make it, you know, look exactly as it is today.
And that window was never intended to be touched. That window's going to remain the same, along with the porch and the front door.
The one in the gable.
Yeah, the one in the gable.
The stained window.
That will not be touched. Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the siding at that point, is that in good shape, or is that going to be replaced also?
Up on top?
Up on top?
It's hard to say. We weren't up there on ladders, so I think that would just have to be determined.
Was that covered in aluminum siding at one time?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
It puts us in a difficult position because, you know, our mandate is to reuse, to have the original siding if you can have it. And actually being older siding, it's probably better. If it's actually from the 1880s, it's probably really hard and is probably better than any wood that you're going to get now. Would you agree, Michael?
In general, that's correct, that newer wood is a faster grown wood, so you'd have more soft material in the wood, and old growth wood is tighter grained, so it is hardier.
Yeah. Obviously, if it's deteriorated completely, which that's a different story. I mean, if it's
So are those front-facing planks, are they salvageable? Are they in a state of being able to be restored even if they wanted to? Or is it something that needs to be readdressed, even if it's the same material but newer?
Well, I think there's a couple of questions, I mean, that the commission has to ask itself. Again, the charge of the commission is to preserve authentic materials wherever possible. Second, they have identified they have a lead report that was not available a week ago, so that I would think the commission may want to review that.
Right.
And look at the cost estimate. I'm not sure if that's the only cost estimate you've gotten for remediation, or if that's, you know, if you're waiting on others or what have you, but those would be things that you've asked for in the past when people have had this situation. Secondly, I think it would be, and I mentioned this to Joyce when I met them on site, that my experience, and this commission has dealt with a couple of siding replacements that have been insurance-related claims, that if a policy says that it is a project must be completed to current code, we have found that, unlike what is being staged tonight, I'm not doubting that, because insurance is changing by the day, as we all know, as it was on the news this morning. But in the past, insurance companies have paid for the repair and remediation of siding. In fact, if you recall, on a project a couple of years ago, for those of you who are on the commission, it turned out to be a savings of $6,000 on that project to repair the historic wood siding, then the cost to remove it and or to recover it with some other synthetic siding. So one of the aspects of this would be to, if now we're talking about removing all the siding, what that cost of that removal of the siding is, in addition to the new siding, how that equates to remediation.
Right.
Even though some of that would be paid for potentially by an insurance reimbursement, again, there's a lot of new information that's coming forward that would play into a decision the commission typically makes on siding replacement requests.
Okay.
Sorry.
And I did specifically, Michael, ask my insurance site if the city code says that this is what it has to be, and he said, we will not do that. They just won't do it, even if our code says that.
Okay.
So,
That,
yeah.
that would be good to get that in writing,
Sure.
because that is kind of against what the National Insurance Council says is to occur.
Sure.
But, and and I've only learned that, like I've told you in the field, that I've gone through this several times, and what the National Insurance Group Council, whatever it's called, says that's not really what the standard is supposed to be in the industry. But again, if you've watched the news this morning, there's states being dropped by insurance companies all the time in recent days, because of the excessive amount of claims that are coming out of various parts of the country. So the insurance industry is changing. There's no doubt about that.
So the second part of this, too, then, is the windows, which clearly need to be replaced. could you tell me, restate again, what would happen to the exterior when the windows get replaced? Is that where I see like some molding over the top there? Is that something that would have to come down?
So Mike Schmidt is approaching the podium. As I mentioned in my report, the proposal that is being requested is a full frame or jam-to-jam replacement of the window, which would require the trim to come off, exterior trim and interior trim to come off, and put an entirely new window unit in. And we've approved both types in the historic district for various projects. The other type would be an insert type of window, which is not quite what's being shown here, and Mike can explain that, that would fit just within the existing window, and that's what you see in a lot of the window replacement commercials where they say they can save your trim, et cetera. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mike, who can give a better explanation.
Mike Schmidt, Schmidt Exteriors.
Fellow certified contractors. This is a historic, this window was engineered and designed specifically to satisfy historical boards across the country from Pella. It's all wood on the outside. You take away this brick molding that's just there for show, and you can put your historical trim in its place. There's two ways to do a window pocket installation, where you take the old sashes out, get rid of the storm windows, you leave the exterior trim in place, and slide that window in. The upside is it's less disruptive to the existing structure. The downside is you're going to lose about a half an inch of glass on either side, because you're doing a frame inside of a frame. And this was actually engineered to minimize the amount of frame and sash dimension to get as close as possible to the existing, to accommodate the pocket install. So the difference is about a half an inch on either side. These are relatively big windows.
Yeah, that's pretty good right there.
Here, you want to see an
Well,
interior?
those are the side windows and rear windows. The front elevation, from what I understand, is the important one.
Most critical.
So if we could see the front elevation. There you go.
There.
That's the front office now, but that little bay section, and then the window off to the side. Those are the ones that show from the road. And you can see they're rather wide in their dimension.
So you would replace those with something like that, but still that would be one over one like they are there?
Yes, yeah, this is, the grill pattern here is just demonstration of what I can do.
So, I'm still curious about the siding and the idea of the front being the historical side with wanting to maintain that wood and that exposure, that three and a half inches versus the rest of the building.
Right.
Could it be a different material if it was also 3.5 inches? Like,
Well, I think it's more of the remediation issue when we start dealing with that. And I hate to say it, what the insurance companies will pay for more than anything else.
will they pay for disposal of that existing siding since it's got lead paint on it?
I don't know.
Because we just found out,
Yeah.
we just found out today that it was lead-based paint.
Yeah.
The insurance company does not know that there's lead-based paint on the siding below. I gave them a lump sum bid to remove the siding, remove the old siding, and put in new siding. That's the bid that they've accepted. So I didn't separate it, and I don't know how that's gonna go with the insurance company if we go back and ask them that. I don't know if they'll say, no, that's,
Well, I did mention it to him today, my insurance man, and told him that we got results, and he said we will not pay for remediation.
What about disposal, though?
Oh, disposal, I would have to ask that specific question.
Does that change your price on disposal?
I mean, it's all into my cost. I would have to figure that out, separate it, and see what that comes up to. It's gonna change the overall cost of disposal, because now I'll have to get a separate bin for it.
Yeah. I think that we kind of need more, I feel like we need more information from you on what's going on with this, because, you know, and I think we would want to see the report of the lead-based paint that's on there and things. And we'd really want to see what each proposal, what each item was going to cost, and I don't know whether we would look at who's paying for it, I guess is my only question in my mind, is if the insurance company is paying for it, do we as a commission care, you know? And I think we do, because it's not money out of your pocket compared to, but if you could, I don't like to continue things, but I would like to see more information from you on that, and to make sure that we get a cost for each proposal, you know, full window removal, full window replacement, sliding, you know, the siding removal, what it's gonna cost, what's the new siding versus fiber cement and cedar. I mean, is the insurance company going to pay for cedar, or are they gonna insist on fiber cement? Or is that something that,
They will pay for either.
They've already accepted the fiber cement board, so.
is the
I would
cedar,
assume they would pay for the cedar, but cedar siding, to get that exposure, you'd have to go to like a clear cedar. And you're talking probably 4 to 5 times the cost of.
well,
Hardy
and see, that's, we wanna make sure that, you know, that the insurance company knows that you're not meeting code by doing fiber cement. Because again, our mandate is to first start with what the material is right now in the way of, preserving it, and if not, replacing it in kind, and then if it can't be replaced in kind, it's fiber cement, you know, so it kind of, it steps up
tiers.
the ladder.
Yeah.
So, and, yeah,
But
so
you
we,
can't get fiber cement in 3-inch or 3.5-inch?
Not the hardy board plank, no. No.
But what
4
about
inch-
like-
4 inches like the Dream Collection, that's the lowest they'll go is 4 inch.
yeah. And, what's the, LP Smart Siding doesn't go that low either?
No, no.
So would it be,
The problem with LP Smart Side right now is, remember, is that.
You can't get the
you can't get
smooth,
the smooth side, which is required by
Right.
our siding policy.
yeah.
Conditions of the soffit
Yes, taper.
and fascia, there's been no discussion on, you're gonna need to replace that or not. I mean,
What's that? I didn't hear you.
On the
The
side.
soffits, fascia boards,
Yeah, the softened fascia right now are all aluminum.
They are.
I don't plan to get into that if I don't have to.
okay, but is the roof replacement, is this just a simple tear-off
Yes.
and replacement?
Yes,
So
sir.
there's no damage to flashings or counter flashings? That's going to, okay, so it's just a strict new shingles,
Yep.
okay?
Well, the counter flashing you're talking about like around the brick chimney?
Well, you know, and under
Because
the
that would have to
siding,
get, that would
yeah.
have to get done. That's
Yeah,
part of the
well,
roof.
I mean, sometimes they need to pull off the siding too.
Yeah, no, that would
for the
all stay.
Counter flashing on that, so I didn't know if that was gonna further disrupt this operation and necessitate the replacement. So you've got aluminum, you pull off the aluminum,
Right.
that counterflashing's probably sandwiched between the original siding.
Yeah.
I doubt if they pulled that off
Yeah.
to get that in there too, so.
I don't know without
Yeah,
removing it.
you won't know until you get in there.
Yep.
So I guess we really want to see more information from you on that, and to make a.
Intelligent decision?
Yeah, does the commission agree?
I concur.
I just want to clarify that it's okay to, I mean, if they got a cost to rehabilitate the wood siding on the front of the house and then did cement fiber or fiber cement around the rest of it, is that acceptable?
Well, it would be
Or is that
different
our
sizes.
decision?
The commission has approved at least one project like that, where they did salvage historic wood siding from the sides and the rear, and used it to make sure the front facade was all wood. So that is an alternative that could be considered. I think what I'm hearing is, at least from those who've spoken, is that I think you're looking for a couple of different cost breakdowns of different scenarios of how to tackle their request versus what our window policy says. So it sounds like, if I'm hearing right, I haven't heard much discussion about window replacement. Is the commission concurring that window replacement seems warranted or not warranted in this case?
I think it's warranted. I just think whether I look at it as the insert would be a better solution because it's salvaging the exterior casings.
Right.
And if we can keep that's my opinion about, salvaging as much of the exterior facade as we can.
Right.
And that way we don't have to rebuild a bunch of stuff, and we're using the actual material.
So for staff to continue to work with the applicant, it sounds like you're fine with a window replacement. So it's a matter of looking at different scenarios for dealing with the siding, from everywhere from
Correct.
not alternate to maybe salvaging on the front facade only, or maybe full replacement. So that gives us some direction so that I can make sure that the applicant is providing you all the information, the various scenarios that you're looking for, so we can move this forward next month.
Correct.
Right.
And the reports on.
Disposal of
Yeah, I mean,
siding
yeah.
around.
So, are you going to email me exactly what you're looking
Yes.
for?
Yeah. I can even sit down with you. You may not want to sit down with me right away, but I will definitely email you, and then we can sit down and discuss this between now and the next deadline.
Sure, yeah.
Michael, and the information on the lead paint.
Pardon?
The report on the lead paint.
Right.
Yeah, the report on the lead paint and the remediation.
So what's in the bag is,
Well, we'd want to,
okay,
I think they're going to want it in one package.
we want it all in one shot.
okay.
We trust you, we just need some documentation.
Sure.
Okay. And then, do you want to bring up the timing or no?
Typically, insurance jobs, they have a year to date to get the repairs done. I'm going to double check with the insurance company, but that leaves us to September 18th to have everything done. If she doesn't have it done in that time frame, she won't get the depreciation. So there could be a chunk of 30-40% that she doesn't receive off the claim.
Well, our next meeting is August 15th.
Yeah, and I know I can get an extension, and I'm sure that this situation would, be accepted to get an extension. So
Yeah.
I'll double check on the time frame.
Yeah, I would imagine we can make a very intelligent decision on the 15th of August. And
Okay.
I agree.
The
Okay.
deadline for that is August 1st.
Deadline's August 1st.
Tuesday, August 1st at 4:30.
Okay, all right, so I'll just wait. You can
I'll
come
email
over
you
whenever.
tomorrow.
Okay.
And tonight, so then we decide if we need to sit down and meet and put our heads together, but it's up to you when you feel like you want to meet with me at this point.
I'm fine.
So,
I'm fine, yeah. Why don't you just let me know tomorrow?
yeah, I'll let you know tomorrow.
Okay.
Good deal.
Okay,
Thank you all, appreciate it.
thank you.
Board is good on this awesome fellow window.
Pretty awesome.
It's one good-looking window.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Next on our agenda is a
Did you want to speak on this issue?
I didn't sign up to begin with, but can I speak or not?
To this issue or to
on
general
this issue,
comments?
on what?
On this issue.
You can, yeah. You can.
I should have done that, but I didn't. I'm Gloria Ann Campbell. I live at 18 South 6th Street, exactly across the street from the house
Sure.
we've been discussing. I've been aware, my family's been in our house since 1946, so I've looked across the street at this house for many years. And I can tell you that in certainly all that time, I've never seen somebody there who has taken such good care of the property, enhanced it. It really has been wonderful to look across the street at what's there now. And so I well appreciate what they are trying to do for a lovely historical building, which, as I said, I've looked at it for all these years, and they're doing the best that anybody has, because it was a rental for many, many years, and you know what that means as far as maintenance. Make it okay so someone will rent it, and that's it. So I just wanted to say that much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Okay. With Secretary's report number 6, item 6.
I have only one item I wanted to bring to the commission that I was hoping to bring it forward tonight and start this, but under my secretary's report from here forward, I'm going to try to update you on all the administrative reviews that have occurred between meetings. I probably should have been doing that previously so that you knew what was being approved administratively on your behalf, but I will try to make that a goal starting next month.
Sounds good. Okay. New business from the commission?
5-minute field guide in August?
Maybe not with our deliberation.
Oh, September?
Hey, I wouldn't hold your breath on it. You know, I've been disappointed all year.
I promise that I will not keep George Salomon any more disappointed, and it will be forthcoming either in August or September.
Very good. Okay, any new business from the public? Mr. Watts? Oh, okay. Anyone from the public that's still here? Okay. With that, can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
And seconded? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? We're adjourned.